as a decorated military officer, a special agent.
Good afternoon, Toronto. How's everybody doing? Got enough energy for another one of these? Yeah, good. OCE, thank you very much for pulling so many amazing people together. And I thank you too for your own visions around how to build and foster entrepreneurship. I do think it makes an incredible difference. So my job today is really just to run through and talk about disruption and what we've learned about it. Most of the things that we've learned about disruption, we've learned from very complex systems, this being one of them. One of the amazing things I think about this is it has an extraordinary set of exponential technologies in it, and yet it is already outdated. I mean, really, we don't fly these anymore. We're figuring out how to scrap this thing and put it away. So if you start with something really complex like this to understand disruption, I think you can get lost kind of in the details. So I'm going to back up and go really to the space shuttles from 300 years ago. And 300 years ago, this was the space shuttle of its time. I mean, really, the only people that could afford this were governments. In Christopher Columbus's case, half of that actually came from a group of wealthy, what we would now call angel investors. We have some really brilliant people that come through Singularity University, especially during the graduate studies program. One of them, however, did come up to me after I showed this picture and asked whether this was a real photograph of Columbus's ship. And, you know, besides the 500-year difference, you know, I kind of pointed out this little spinnaker in the background. He then sent me this photo. So, touche, I guess. So, Columbus to me was a really amazing entrepreneur. He was able to get investment. It took him actually a long time, too, to do. He had some bad ideas around the world of what the world looked like and some of the dimensions. He thought, for example, the Eurasian landmass was much, much larger than it was. He thought Japan, which was that little island located in the top, he thought that was a lot closer. He even mistaken the Arabic mile for the statute mile. And so he thought the distance was 2,000 miles. The actual distance is 8,000 miles. There wasn't a ship in the world that could have made that journey. And many of the people that he went to for money knew that and knew that he was completely wrong. But I think it's interesting because what it reminds and tells me is that entrepreneurs, one, don't have to have a lot of experience, don't have to be skilled, they don't even have to be right, and they still can succeed. And we see that all the time in Silicon Valley. If you remember, at least what he was looking for, spices were drawing him out with the ships. At that time, if you brought back a ship full of gold, it would have been worth less than bringing back a ship full of spice. And the spice trade was really enormous. I mean, today we greatly attribute the Industrial Revolution from having come from the spice trade. The demand for it was so high. At that time, you just couldn't satisfy the demand, and it was essentially used for food preservation. They thought that spices preserve food. Spices don't do that. It's a myth. They definitely make rotten food taste better, though, and so you could eat rotten food for a few days longer. Anyway, enormous trade for hundreds of years, and the entire trade is brought down by one man. And I've never met an audience yet that had even a single person that knew who it was, which I think gives an indication as to how little we've really understood disruption. In fact, I would say that we've understood it for about 20 years. If I show you a photograph of the person, one of our faculty members, Brad Templeton, told me that everybody looked like that back then. But you still don't know who he is, even if you hear the name, Frederick Tudor. Who is that? 1783, 1864. Tudor invented this. Any thoughts on what this is? Because when I saw it, I certainly didn't know. He comes up with the idea of the ice house. He builds a giant warehouse, he insulates the walls, and stuffs the entire thing with ice that he's cut out of the lakes of Massachusetts. And he realizes that over the entire summer, just because the laws of thermodynamics, only loses a few inches of ice off the outside, kind of why glaciers don't melt. And as a result, he's able to actually create a business cutting this ice out of the lake, putting it on horses, putting it on trains, bringing it to ships, and shipping it around the world as a much better food preservative than spice. And in the process, in less than 20 years, he disrupts the entire world's spice trade. And oddly enough, his biggest customer ended up being India, where the spices used to come from. So now, the question I kind of have for you is, how many businesses and people that were in the spice trade do you think made it into the ice trade? Because the answer is 0. Because that was the spice trade. I mean, it was just something totally different. And if you looked even at the details, even the ships that were used to ship spices were not the ships that were used to ship ice. Nothing was the same. And if you kind of get this concept, you'll also get this concept for the industries and businesses that you're in. And this happened slowly over 20 years. And you